Happy Sunday and our weekend conversation, and still we've done them some on Saturday, some on Sunday, obviously with the Notre Dame basketball game yesterday, an opportunity to reflect on that. Tom Dienhart, Brian Neubert joined me. I want to thank our sponsor, and that's the Purdue Union Club Hotel, and all that they've done for us this year, sponsoring our Zoomcast. They will be looking forward to 2021, as we all were and will, and hopefully some level of a return to normalcy. But a great place to visit if you're on campus and that as well. And also, we had several people sign up yesterday for gift subscriptions. If you haven't found that gift for your Boilermaker fan, and it's late in the process, we understand it's December 20th, you can gift a subscription. Go to our site. We should have a story up there for you. So an easy link to be able to do that. So feel free to do that as you celebrate the holidays. Okay. Brian, I'm going to start with you. Very positive game yesterday, obviously, for Purdue, a 10-point win over Notre Dame. It got a little dicey in the second half, but there's a lot to like about if you're a Purdue fan, of what you're seeing on this basketball team. Kind of a fun team to watch. Maybe that was a function of how Notre Dame plays as well, but I thought Purdue really came through in the last 10 minutes to a pretty convincing victory over the Fighting Irish in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to fight off a sneeze right now, so hang on a second.
All right.
There we go. Neubert 1, sneeze 0.
There
yeah, Purdue's a good offensive basketball team. They're a totally different offensive team than they were last year. The transformation has been pretty significant. As long as they don't turn the ball over, they're a really good offensive team, and I think that was sort of one of the stories of yesterday. And could be the story of Tuesday night at Iowa, because Iowa doesn't guard anybody either, like Notre Dame doesn't. So, but Purdue's got a lot of shooters. They've got a couple of good big men who are really good, really effective, really match up problems for other people. And this team seems to have a pretty good thing going offensively. Again, just have to not turn the ball over. I thought it was pretty remarkable yesterday. Purdue, after turning the ball over wholesale so often this season, one live ball turnover yesterday. Yeah. 6 total, but only one live ball turnover. That was really something. And if Purdue can, play like that a bunch this season, they're going to be okay. And if Purdue can get the sort of guard play it got yesterday, Eric Hunter was magnificent. I don't throw the word magnificent around lightly. But Eric Hunter was magnificent. That was some of the best guard play Purdue's gotten in my frame of reference covering Purdue, period. And there have been good ones at Purdue, but he was spectacular. 8 assists to no turnovers, alternated beautifully between scorer and facilitator, made big plays, level-headed plays, smart plays, savvy plays when Purdue needed it most. He was just fantastic. And, of course, the guy he guarded didn't score after he came in, averaging 19 a game. Purdue's just got a lot going for it right now. I think it still has to get a lot better defensively. How much better they can get, I'm not entirely sure, but they're trending upward. They were good against Ohio State, and they were much better against Notre Dame. 78 points, still a lot of points, but they did some really positive things guarding Prentice Hub, the guy who they made to beat them. Trey Wirtz was the guy who scored 27, so that was systematic. That was Purdue's choice to make. So that wasn't an utter breakdown on Purdue's part defensively. There were breakdowns. There will be breakdowns from here on out. But, Purdue is creeping toward improvement defensively. And this team just has a lot going for it right now. Its juniors have really responded to, that Miami game, getting called out by their coach afterwards. How much of that was direct causation, I don't know. But it would be too big a coincidence for all those guys to be playing their best basketball in a sustained manner ever since that second half meltdown at Miami.
Hey, Brian, 3 wins in a row since that meltdown in Coral Gables. Here we go, my friend. The next 4 games, 3 of them are on the road. At Iowa, they come home for that Christmas Day game against Maryland, then at Rutgers, then at Illinois. Just sort of give, I guess, viewers a sense of how critical these next 4 games are. And maybe when we get on the other side of this, Brian, what record would you be satisfied with over these next 4 games?
Well, honestly, if you win one of those road games, that would be a win to me. I think you have to get Maryland at home. I don't think you have to get anything, but I think Maryland's very beatable. Having them at home, what home even means this year, I have no idea. What the road means this year, I have no idea. But that's a really tough stretch. Those are 3 ranked teams at their places on the road. 2 of them are like top 5 caliber teams. It would be an awful lot to ask for Purdue to get more than one of those games. It would be a lot for Purdue to ask. It would be a lot to ask Purdue to get one of those games. If Purdue can somehow get 2 of those 4, including the Maryland game at home, I think that'd be a big win. If you go 1-3, I don't think it's the end of the world either.
Yeah, interesting times, and it does change quickly in basketball sometimes, and it appears to be changing for Purdue. Let's move to football topics. Obviously, the end of Purdue's season with no game this past week against Indiana. Purdue finishes the year 2-4. Obviously, work to be done. We don't know exactly what the next, how spring ball will come out. But if you're Jeff Brom, what will the next few months be important from a team perspective? Tom, I'll start with you.
Well, first you got to fill some staff vacancies, right? I think we can all agree the biggest issues on this team lie defensively, in particular, then special teams too. But to the defensive point, guys, who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Of course, as we all expected last week, Bob Diaco and Purdue have parted ways after just 1 season at West Lafayette. Purdue will be on its 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years, guys. And, of course, we found out late last week that Greg Brown, the cornerbacks coach, is also parting ways with Purdue after just a brief 2-year stint here as well. So you got to fill those vacancies, and then Brom's got to figure out what he wants to do defensively and stick with it, guys. I mean, this next hire is huge. There's no way you can overstate the importance of this hire. You can't change defensive coordinators again after 2021. What's Jeff Brom want to be on defense? What type of defense does he need to complement the style of offense that he plays? So those are that's huge right there, fellas. Before anything can be done schematically, personnel-wise, he's got to get this hire made sooner. Would be better than later, obviously, as well. I'm sure this new coordinator, my guess is going to be higher than he's going to hopefully tab the cornerbacks coach. Who knows? Maybe the new coordinator will shuffle some other positions around. Who knows? But you got to let this next guy come in and have a plan, and maybe if he wants to make some hires, bring in some people he wants, let him do that. So, again, a key off-season, guys. We saw, of course, over the weekend, too, a Big Ten West rival, Illinois, brought in a new coach, and Brett Bielema, guys. We know his track record at Wisconsin was outstanding. He was an utter failure at Arkansas. Has been on the NFL for a few years now. So again, I think we can all agree Brett Bielema is not Vince Lombardi, but we all think that he's certainly a better coach than Lovie Smith. He's got a familiarity with the Big Ten and college football. So my point is, the competition is not going to get any easier in the Big Ten West moving forward here, guys.
Yeah, Brian, Bielema certainly brings in an ability to recruit, or at least an ability that has a pretty big scale personality. Some question about his offense, though, and is he going to be an innovative guy? He's kind of been a hand in the dirt type coach, at least in his time at Wisconsin. Maybe that was a function of where they were. But Brian, how do you see that hire and again the competition in that West, which has always been kind of a carrot for Purdue, is that, you can compete in that division if you just can get your program up to a particular level?
Show me a good program that's gotten good running a 1980s offense. I mean, just give me an example. Maybe there is one out there. I don't know. But I feel like when you're a bad program and you need to get to another level, you have to do something to set yourself apart. And I think Illinois is recycling somebody here who, babysat Barry Alvarez's program for X number of years up there, won a good amount of games because of it, and then went to a situation where he had to take on a project like the one he's taking on at Illinois and failed miserably. So I'm not sure what Brett Bielema does for you necessarily in recruiting. I know he's an engaging guy. I know he's got a track record, but it just reeks of a disaster to me. But I could be totally wrong, but it just doesn't do a whole lot for me on the surface. And if I'm Illinois, Illinois has been down for a long time, and they, needed something to set themselves apart here. And I don't think they got it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, Bielema grew up in the state of Illinois, played at Iowa, and like you said, through 7 years, 8 years at Wisconsin, did have success. But how he had it, is going to be interesting to see if he can build from the ground up, which is apparently what needs to happen. Go ahead, Brian.
He's also been kind of a divisive sort of guy too, and you got to be careful with that. Look at what just happened at Purdue. Purdue brought in Bob Diaco with some serious red flags, at the jobs he'd been in prior, and he comes into Purdue like an invasive species. And it just seems like this was a really, really bad deal behind the scenes. I mean, it has to be for a guy to get fired after, 6 games. Something really went wrong here. And you got to be really careful with a certain personality type, because the last thing you need is to take a bad program and then give it even more drama, give it even more tribalism, things like this. And just, I don't know Brett Bielema. I just know he's a pretty freewheeling sort of guy personally. And he's like, I don't know what Barry Alvarez would tell you nowadays about Brett Bielema. I don't know what the Arkansas, isn't he suing Arkansas right now? Doesn't he still have an open lawsuit against Arkansas?
I don't know if that's still going on or not. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm just saying, is wherever this guy goes, the bridges behind him tend to be ashes. So that's, I think, always something people ought to keep in mind when they make hires, is how does this guy leave places, in addition to how does he do when he comes to them? And I think Purdue just learned that, the hard way as well, because I don't know who they would have talked to at Nebraska, but when Purdue hired Bob Diaco, you would have thought from the Nebraska people that this guy was Lucifer himself. And I wondered how in the world a guy in 1 year at a place could cultivate that kind of reputation for himself. Yet here we are, talking much the same way that the Nebraska people were talking about him. It's just a remarkably unique skill you have to be able to be that much of a divider in such a short period of time, based on everything we understand.
Yeah. Interesting thoughts. Tom, obviously Mike Babinski spoke on Purdue's radio network show this week about the future. He certainly, and not surprisingly, and he spoke about how he's very confident in the future of Purdue football. But 2021 is going to be a big year, and Purdue opens up against Oregon State. They will play Notre Dame in week 3. They also will go to UConn, I believe, in week 2. Hard to, obviously the AD that's his job, is to support his guy, and he should support his guy. And Purdue fans that feel like Jeff Brom is going anywhere in the near future are wrong, in my view. But it's something that needs to work out, obviously, and needs to improve. 2021, a big year. It's hard to underestimate that.
Yeah, you're right. That schedule you talked about, Oregon State, the program very similar to Purdue on a lot of levels. And a little bit on the rise under Jonathan Smith, a former Beaver quarterback. Won't be an easy out. UConn, of course, didn't even play football this last year. They sat out the entire 2020 season. And you mentioned the Fighting Irish, Alan. I believe, in addition to IU, the East Division foes for Purdue will be Michigan State and Ohio State. My point is, there's some heavy lifting on the schedule. And, you like to think there's going to be success, at least at the 500 level, hopefully above the 500 level. Certainly Mike Babinski, Alan, when he spoke to Tim Newton on Thursday, said he expects a 12-game season +1. So certainly Mike Babinski has his eyes on Purdue getting back in the bowl business for the first time since the 2018 season next year. So, yeah, again, we talked about a couple of the bigger issues, that the hires that need to be made, the improvement that has to take place defensively, guys. And, of course, special teams, I mentioned briefly before, got to get better. I mean, I think we all can agree, there weren't many positives from the special teams unit. TJ Sheffield shows some promise as a return man, but the punting game, the kicking, still no semblance of a punt return game. And, of course, again, the blocks, the kickoff return coverage, you name it, that's got to get buttoned up. So Yeah, guys, there's a big sense of urgency. And maybe that's the nicest way to put it. I'll say that. There's a big, there's a big sense of urgency in 2021. Jeff's not going anywhere. And again, we heard Mike is very much behind him. He's got to be. And you got to have leadership at the top. And Jeff is fully supported by Mitch Daniels and, of course, Mike Bobensky. Now, again, the ball's in Jeff's lap. More changes are being made. Now it's time to produce. Nobody expects 10 wins, but I think they expect a winning record and, at the very least, a bowl trip of some sort.
Brian, you take the last question on this, and we want to talk about and it's hard to look in the crystal ball of post-COVID and hope that that's what we're going to be seeing in the 2021 season. But this is all a hard thing to put your finger on in terms of the disarray that was caused by this for every team, and Purdue being one of them, certainly. If you're Jeff Brom, or if you're the fan base, I should say, how much do you discard some of this just because of the predicament that we are all in terms of this world?
Well, I think it's important to note that this college football season was played during a pandemic, and I think that casts a pall over all of the results. Now, I understand not everyone's going to look at it that way. Results do matter still, even if they matter a little bit less this year. But I think it affected everybody differently. Purdue's not the only team in the country that expected to be good or thought it could be good and wasn't good. There's Penn State, there's Michigan, Duke and Kentucky basketball right now aren't exactly themselves. I think this just affected everybody differently, and it's probably not a coincidence that Northwestern had the least COVID in the Big Ten and got to the Big Ten title game. That's just the reality of the season. But, competitively, Purdue took a big step backward this year. And there's no erasing that from the record books. You wanted to have a season. You did have a season. The season went badly, and there's no going back now. So Purdue's in a situation here where they just got to get right now. They just got to get things back to where they were 2 years ago, where it seemed like these guys really wanted to win. It seemed like things were all moving in the right direction. I think now is the ultimate test of not just Jeff Brom as a guy who came in and put a jolt of energy into this program after it had lost for so many years, a guy who was pretty creative offensively. Now this is the ultimate test of how good of a head coach he is, because he has to make good hires. He has to get everybody on board with where he wants this thing going. And he just has to do a good job now as a leader. He has to do a good job being kind of the proverbial captain of the ship. And I think that's going to be a pretty colossal challenge. When he first came in, again, I will repeat this over and over again, the guys on that roster just were sick of losing. And sometimes somebody just comes in with a different voice, puts a little bit of energy in them. They respond to something different, and things get better right away. And then you get to a point where you've upgraded the recruiting, great, but you might not necessarily have that same edge to your roster that you had before. I think he's got to get that edge back. But more than anything, he has to guide philosophy. He has to make great hires here, and he has to dictate what's going on in an effective manner all across his football team, not just on offense.
Going to be an interesting 2021 in a number of ways, and we'll look forward to hashing that out. We will have a weekend conversation probably next Sunday, I would guess, on the 27th. And we'll obviously have a lot on the site with 2 basketball games this week as we head into the holidays. And we wish all of you the happy holidays and Christmas. Certainly will be around the corner here this week as well, but we wish happy holidays to everybody along the line. I want to thank our sponsor, and that, of course, the Purdue Union Club Hotel. And don't forget, if you are looking for that last-minute gift, you can gift Purdue or giftgoldenblack.com to your favorite Boilermaker. Please consider doing so. And on behalf of our staff, again, happy holidays to all of you. So we'll see you next week on our next weekly conversation. Look forward to doing that. Have a great week, everybody.